Welcome to the new Frontline podcast. My name is Siena Rose, and if you're watching on the video interview, you'll notice that we are not in the standard podcast studio. We're actually on location in Colorado Springs to interview a few people. So I have with me Michael Gaal, who is the Colorado Springs D11 Superintendent. You also have a history of, you were in the Air Force, you were in various admin positions in schools in Washington, D.C., Oakland, California, and Detroit, and now you serve as a superintendent. So welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us, and welcome to Colorado Springs.
Thank you. It's my first time visiting.
You'll fall in love like we all do.
I'm certain. Well, we are here because there is a story developing, and I know we'll talk about the D11, the union strike that's happening, but at first, for anyone who hasn't heard the previous story of what's going on, I want to set up the background. So can you take me back to December 2024 and set up what's been happening with the union up until this point?
Yeah, I'll take you all the way back to July of 2022 when I started here in the Colorado Springs School District 11. This is a system that's been in crisis for decades. This is not a COVID issue. This is a classic urban system challenge that exists in America, where tax base starts to leave the urban core of a city and there become challenges. We've had decreasing enrollment associated with decreasing achievement for decades. For decades, we've lost over 30% of our student market share at the same time that the county population has doubled. And so in a system of choice, you can't just blame it on the demographics changing in a downtown environment. People are not coming to District 11 because they are choosing to go to higher quality experiences. That's been happening for decades, and I was hired by this Board of Education in July of 22 to change that vector. We've increased enrollment for the last 3 years. We've increased achievement in both math and ELA each year in those 3 years, and we continue that upward vector. In December of 2024, the school board made a decision to let the current collective bargaining agreement, referred to as the master agreement, with our local CSEA, which stands for Colorado Springs Education Association, expire in according to the terms within that master agreement. There was no political shenanigans, there was no manhandling. The actual agreement allows for its expiration if not supported by the Board of Education. That action happened in December of 2024.
All right. And what was the reason behind the board's decision to let the contract expire?
You'll have a chance to speak with the board, but I believe it's time for a new vision in District 11. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There are 17 school districts in El Paso County, of which we are the third largest. All other districts in El Paso County do not have a collective bargaining agreement. It's very important for people to understand that the word teacher and union are not synonymous. We have a single strategy in Colorado Springs District 11, which is the only way to student achievement is guaranteed access to high quality instruction. That comes first and foremost by supporting and loving and valuing and compensating and better benefiting and better training your teachers. We are a teaching and learning institution. We only exist to teach students. We have to have the best teachers to do that. There seems to be some confusion at the union level on whether or not that strategy is in support of their ends to increase membership. I'm not anti-union, I'm not pro-union. I'm just so pro-student that I need every teacher to show up for students. Only a third of our kids are performing at grade level. Like I said, we've lost enrollment, we've lost achievement for decades. And we're the only one that has a master agreement associated with a formalized union. That has to change. Our students deserve the same access as do our near-peer neighbors north of us, south of us, east of us, and west of us. No other district has that formalized relationship, and every teacher in District 11 continues to have a contract and continues to have the very robust statute support by the state of Colorado. There is no loss in this move, there is only gain and opportunity. Matter of fact, this year alone, we introduced the first two $100,000 teacher salaries in El Paso County. Record-breaking. We moved from starting salary at $42,000 to over $50,000 in 1 year. Last year we gave a 10% raise to our teachers. Why? Because we need the best teachers in all of El Paso County. At the same time that nobody in the region gave more than a 2% raise. We seek to move starting teacher salary to over $70,000 a year. That's more than my daughter made graduating with a doctorate in atmospheric science. We have to get this to a place where teachers feel valued and they feel the power of everything that we can do to ensure that students can get access to their high quality instruction.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. You're very passionate about this, and it's clear. And I found this Gazette article from 2022, like you had mentioned. You had this great quote that I just wanted to highlight. You said, "You just can't win if the infighting is larger than the call for action. We can't be in an adult war with kids in the middle."
Yeah, I gave that interview in 2022 when I first arrived. I went and found an elementary school that was doing the impossible. They were exceeding expectations in spite of the restrictions within the system. Nobody ever asks me what kids need. I hear all the time about what adults need. Come to any board meeting in America, and the boardroom will be divided between bride and groom, just like when you go to a wedding. Those that are for an initiative, those are against. Our students are telling us they need active, engaged opportunities to learn. Never have I met a third grader who says, what I'd really like is a long-term sub that changes twice a year, that isn't certified and hasn't been trained in the curriculum that you're asking them to teach on. So we rephrase every one of our strategies through the needs of our students. And I'll be honest, we're changing at breakneck pace. And that's a lot on adults. It is hard. It is hard to change. For 56 years, the school board and the superintendent have had to ask the union if they agree with the strategy. It's really important for people to understand that more teachers are coming to work on CSEA's one-day planned action than are honoring that action. To 2 to 1. We have 2/3 of our teachers who said, I will be here for students because students need my high quality instruction. So we have to get back to a place where we ask the students. And I know there will be students who support this action because students are certainly caught up in how exciting it can be to protest. But students are not performing at grade level. How can you lose a day of instruction when you're the lowest performing school district in the county? How can you say that there's value in what you're protesting if you're actually holding the students' learning hostage instead of actually giving me all of what it is that you've given to this profession? Tell me what you need in your classroom, we'll give it to you. We'll give you more. That's our goal. Highest quality instruction to meet the kids with the greatest amount of need.
Yeah. You brought up CSEA's one-day action strike. Let's talk about that. So the strike is in response, correct me if I'm wrong, but to the board letting the master agreement expire. And the strike came, they voted on it, there was a whole bunch of sketchy stuff about how they decided to vote on it, but we're here, the strike, if you would call it that, even is about to happen. Tell me more about that, because it's not even a full day from what I understand.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the strike is really about. My personal opinion is I believe it's a political action. It's filed under an unfair labor practice. Again, we're exceeding expectations for compensation. We've increased the quality of the benefits without increasing out-of-pocket expenses. We've actually protected teacher positions in the building and cut central office to balance those enrollment budgets. So, I'm not a labor law expert, but I don't see the unfair labor practice. If you see CSEA's actual messaging, they say they're going to picket for 2 hours. They're going to go knock on doors to raise awareness and get people to vote, because the ballots were a mail-in only state, and the ballots for the local school board election dropped 2 days after the planned action. And then they're going to have a picnic in the park at the same time that kids in high school right across the street don't have access to high quality instruction. So I think there's some irony, no irony lost on me, that what is supposed to be a call to action for the needs of teachers is really a call to vote for our candidates. And I think it's important because, over the last 2 years when we were under the guise of the collective bargaining agreement, our negotiation process, the board asked the CSEA organization to announce themselves as an apolitical organization and not use the school district and the school district's equipment for political purposes. We continually have to reprimand teachers for sending political calls to action over district email and resources. That's against the law. It's not against the board because the board falls in a different political light than the CSEA. It's just against the law. And so we have to, again, remember, what does a student need? A student needs a teacher for 6.5 hours a day who's going to pour all of their profession and their expertise into ensuring that that student continues to increase their achievement over time and finds their place in our local community when they graduate.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's frustrating to hear about everything you're doing right and how the union continues to kind of be a thorn in the side. How do you overcome that, and how do you continue to press forward in this fight to really focus on what the big deal is here, which is to give students what they need to succeed?
Yeah, I want to be really clear here. We love our teachers, and that's all this district is about. There is a very vocal minority voice of the union who's obviously frustrated with the loss of their collective bargaining agreement that they held strongly for 50 plus years. Our teachers are telling us that they want to be a part of the Colorado Springs School District 11. They are leaning into the initiatives that we have in our strategies to support teaching and learning. They are active in giving us feedback on what's working and what's not. They still have access to helping to direct the calendar through our scheduling committee. They are active members of what we do in this district. The voice that has been isolated is that singular politicized voice of CSEA, and that's what you're starting to hear discomfort with. But our teachers believe in what we're doing. They believe in our students, and we're thankful for that.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, you've mentioned that you've talked to other teachers and parents, and especially parents. You mentioned earlier that a lot of people have the mistaken idea that teachers and unions are synonymous. What is your messaging to them? How do you communicate to people that you can be pro-teacher and not be pro-union?
Yeah, I think a lot about what we ask of our students. I ask our students all the time to be critical thinkers and analyze the data. I won't convince everyone. There are some people that feel very strongly on either side of these politics, but don't measure us for the political party of who sits in a chair on the board. Measure us for our outcomes and our achievement and our objectives. Measure us for what we do. We define equity as putting our money where our mouth is. 3 years ago, we had starting salary of $42,000 a year. That's barely a living wage. In 1 year, we moved that to over $50,000. Why? Because I came in here and I knew that what our teachers needed was to be rewarded. We can't get people into education because it's not a livable wage. I already shared with you, we have a $100,000 salary. We want to move starting salary to over $70,000 a year. We want people who want to change lives for children to see District 11 as their home. So what I want parents to do is I want them to see that every day of learning is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for your child to find the thing that they're excited about, to have them race in the front door like we did when we were children. This idea of politicizing, where was the strike pre-COVID when the numbers were in the tank? Where was the strike 10 years ago when the budget was frozen and there were no raises? Where was the strike 15 years ago when a previous conservative board took over? Why are you striking 2 days before ballots drop, and why didn't you strike when the master agreement was expired at the end of last year? I think parents need to ask harder questions. If you're standing on the side of teachers, notice that more teachers are coming to work than aren't. So stand on the side of your child and have them come to school. We want to teach your child. It's the greatest honor and privilege that I've ever had. I spent the first half of my life in the military. I went to war for a Republican president. I went to war for a Democratic president. Nobody asked me when I went into the war zone, did I vote for that person? So I know that teachers might not agree with the individual politics of specific board members. I know some parents might not agree. Every American has the right to exercise their vote. But as a system, we're then supposed to function under a majority rule. This board has enabled me and my administration to increase enrollment and increase achievement while increasing compensation, benefits, and supports to teachers in ways that no other district is doing, not only in El Paso County, but in the state of Colorado. Get on board and join us to ensure that your children can have the same incredible experience in Colorado Springs that so many of us have had over the last generation.
Mm-hmm. Those are very powerful words and some great advice. Well, we're almost out of time, but if you had to give a piece of advice to any other school district that maybe is in a similar situation with their union, with their students, and can look at District 11 in El Paso County and see how you've really changed things around, what advice would you give them? What would you encourage them to do?
Yeah, I've gotten advice from some friends in other sectors, and just don't let those words be synonymous. Your workforce is not the union. Your workforce are the people that actually deliver on the service or product that you're responsible for. Our product and our customer are actually students. Join us in this vision. I'm on my way to leave here to go we do a flower bar at every school. We call it Petals of Appreciation. We bring an outside flower distribution company, and teachers get to build their own bouquets. each teacher because we love them and we appreciate them. We don't ask for their union membership card up front to say you can't make your bouquet because you support the union. Just love our kids and let's get there together. Don't be confused by the politics that are destroying children's opportunity to learn. That has to be our focus. It's the only reason we exist. Without the students, there is no District 11, there is no public education system.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join me on the podcast today, Mike.
Well, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. My next guest that I have with me here is Jill Haffley, who is the vice president of the board here in Colorado Springs. She is a 30-year teacher and has been a former union member and has taught in D11 for over 30 years, or taught in Colorado for over 30 years. So, Jill, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So you have a really interesting story, and I'd love to start with why your experience being on the board right now, when you joined the board, and what it means to you to be able to be in this higher level administration serving the school district.
So I'm a 30-year teaching veteran. Most of my time was in District 11, where I'm at now as a board member. Being a board member was not on my radar. I had no intention of actually doing this, but things kind of fell into place, and I felt called, if you will, to run for the position. There were 4 empty seats, and I was one of many people running for this position, and here I am. So that happened in 2023. I retired July 1st, and then I ended up getting sworn in at the beginning of December.
So you said you kind of felt called and led to applying for this. What made you feel emboldened to become a teacher in the first place?
I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. When I was in high school early on, I remember being a freshman, and one of my teachers, one of our assignments was, pick something you were interested in doing for the rest of your life, and then we had to write about it and present some sort of project on that. And I considered a few things that I thought initially, yeah, that'd be really cool to do, but then when it came right down to it, it was teaching, education, what my teachers meant to me that made me want to become a teacher, and that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. What grades or years of students did you teach?
So I was a high school teacher. I wasn't anything other than that. Many other teachers just do elementary or they do middle school and high school. I was just high school, and I was a U.S. history and government teacher for the majority of my career. Now, because of what I did in college, I had certifications that allowed me to be able to teach PE for a few years, and being a gym rat and in the pool, that was pretty great for me. So then I switched over to what my degree was actually in, which was history, and made a career of it.
When you started teaching, what was the language around unions? When did you first hear about the teacher union, and when did you join?
I didn't know anything about a teachers union until I got to D11. D11 was the second district that I worked in, and to me, I wasn't a union person. I didn't necessarily believe in the idea of the union. I understand that they were important in the very early days of the union idea, the big theme of a union. But for me, when I became a teacher in the early 90s, it was not really anything that I considered. My goal was always surrounded by students and what they needed. And so for me, it wasn't about me, it was about the kids.
Mm-hmm. So when you eventually decided to leave the union, it's a very important part that you're no longer a union member. Tell me about that story. What happened? What made you choose to leave the union, or maybe become aware of what was happening?
So I became a member of the union simply because I was involved in school. I wasn't just teaching. I was coaching 3 different sports. I was sponsoring clubs. I was the student council advisor. For me, the only way to do something is to jump in to the deep end right away. As a teacher, we know that kids can get angry with us, and they can say anything they want about any teacher at any time, and their words could ruin a teacher's career. And so the union provided for me, that I thought at the time, was liability protection. I didn't know that they had anything to do with what they call collective bargaining and negotiating for pay. That wasn't my concern. My concern was if a kid gets mad at me because they've earned a grade they didn't want, they could get sassy and they could do something that might ruin my career. So that's why I joined the union. Twice. The first time I joined, I got out relatively quickly because I just didn't like where they were going. What were they doing with my money? It didn't seem like I was getting what I was paying for. And so I decided I was going to get out of it. The only way you can get out of it was to go down to their office and fill out the paperwork, explain to them why you wanted out. Well, at that time, for me, a very big, muscle-bound man came over, pulled a chair up right next to me. I felt like I was being interrogated. Why was I leaving? You know, you really don't want to do this. It started to become a little intimidating for me. And he and I were the only people in the room at the time. Finally, the secretary came out, started walking in, and that's when I told him, I pointed at him, and I said, you know, you need to back off. And so I left the union at that time, and I felt really good about that. I felt free. But then I started picking up more responsibility at school, and I thought, okay, maybe I should get back into this. So I did. I didn't like it, but I thought that I needed the protection. I didn't know there was any other way to go about that. It was years that I was a member of the union, and I never got anything out of it. They would come back with, hey, we got you a 2% raise. And I thought, 2%? Are you kidding me? I spend more than that just paying the union every month by the end of the year. So I was angry about that. And then COVID hit. And the then school board, in my estimation, my opinion, went out of their lane, and they required teachers and students to wear masks a full year and a half after COVID started. This was in September of 21. And I don't like being told what to do, especially by people that were not following their own mandate. They were posting pictures of themselves on Facebook at dinner parties and concerts, and yet when they'd come in here for a board meeting, they'd virtue signal, and they'd be wearing their masks. And so when I get angry, I write. And somebody talked me into writing something, and I came up to the podium, and I spoke to the dais, and of course they could have cared less what I had to say. And so I told my principal at school I wasn't going to be wearing a mask, that I didn't believe in it, and no place else in the city was doing it. The El Paso County Health Department wasn't recommending it. Why were we doing it? I wasn't going to do it. So I was told that if I didn't comply, that they would take my kids away from me, walk me out of the school, and watch me drive away until I would comply. That's exactly what happened. So I remember sitting in my classroom and no kids showing up into my classroom, and the principal walks in and he says, we corralled your kids off, they're in a different room, they're not coming in here. What's your plan? And I shook my head. I'm sorry, I'm not wearing a mask. I don't, it's not required by the people that are making those decisions. And he said, okay, and in came the head of security, and he walked me out of a school that I had spent, at that time, 25 years of my life at. Walked me out to my vehicle, watched me get in, and watched me drive away. And I stayed out for about 2 weeks. And so when I came back, I didn't wear a mask. I wore one of those plastic see-through things, but it wasn't even a full one. It was about half my face, and then I pulled it down even from there. So I was pretty angry about the whole thing, and so I contacted the union, and I asked for help in that. And they pushed me around from person to person. September of 21, I'm still waiting for a call from an attorney from them. So here we are 4 years later. Now, I'm not a member of the union anymore. But what they did was they strung me along, because at that point I said, that's enough. I don't want a part of this anymore. You guys are no help. I'm paying for nothing. And that's when they told me I had missed the deadline, that they budgeted their money, much like families do with mortgages and such, and they weren't going to let me out. And so I fought that. And then they said, we'll only let you out if you tell us what you're going to spend that $83 a month on. And I thought, how dare you ask me what I'm going to spend the money I earned on so that you'll let me out of something that you're not even providing for me. Ultimately, they let me out. It took a while, and it was a fight. And it shouldn't be like that. They're supposed to provide a service, and they didn't. So when I got on the board, it wasn't about me. My vote to not renew the teachers' union contract or the master agreement with the district had nothing to do with me. It was all about what they were saying they were going to do, and they didn't do. And so it wasn't a termination of a contract. It wasn't an ending of a contract. We didn't renew a contract when it came up for expiration. It's as simple as that. It was a business decision based on the fact that here's this private company, corporation, if you will, having its hands on public monies, telling a public school district what it could and couldn't do based on this master agreement, and had no public accountability. There's nobody elected on that teachers union, not like we are for the school board. And so it came down to a business decision for me personally. And that's the long way through it.
That's a crazy story, though, to hear how the union treated you, or how in response to choosing to not wear a mask, and how it's very sad, honestly. It's almost unbelievable, but I know that there's even more crazy stories.
Oh yes, I'm not the only one. I mean, my story is specific to me,
Yeah.
but other people have stories where the union just not has come through for them.
Yeah. So you mentioned you were part of the vote to not renew the contract, and the union in response has chosen to plan this ridiculous 2-hour and picnic strike.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Because it obviously at some points it feels just like a tantrum that the union is throwing. What do you think?
Pretty much. I don't really understand what they're striking for. They got a 10% raise. Teachers got a 10% raise this year without collective bargaining through the union, I might add. And again, when I was part of the union, 2% was a great raise that they were talking about. Well, without the union, teachers got a 10% raise this year. They have better benefits, health benefits, than they've ever had before. And as I understand it, they're not paying any more out of pocket for that. So to me, what are you striking for? You should be thanking people. And I want to be clear that teachers are thanking us for health benefits. I get messages all the time that, wow, this is really great. I really appreciate this. Thank you so much. Other people are saying in hushed voices because they don't want to be retaliated against by their peers. I don't like the union. I don't like what it stands for. I don't want to be a part of it. I'm only a part of it because I need the liability insurance. But there's other ways to go around that. And the fact that they want to do a one-day strike 2 days before ballots drop in an upcoming election really shines a mirror on them, really is telling about what their priority is. They'll say they're striking for kids, except nobody can explain to me how that actually gets to kids. They're actually choosing a day when kids are in school rather than a professional development day, when kids aren't in school. So if it's really about the kids, they would do it when kids weren't there instead of leaving kids in a lurch. They signed up to be teachers. Teachers teach. Without kids, we don't have teachers. They have to start thinking in terms of it's got to be something bigger than themselves. And what's bigger than themselves are the students that they have every day in class. So to me, it's really frustrating. And the idea that they're going to be striking, if you will, for 2 hours in the beginning of the day and then going out to canvass and go knocking on people's doors to canvass for their particular candidates for the upcoming school board election, to me is criminal. It's got to be illegal. They're saying unfair labor practices, and I don't think they can even define what that is in the first place, but then they're leaving that to go canvass. And then after they're done canvassing, they're going to have a long lunch, an hour-and-a-half lunch, and then from there they're going to have some big soiree in a local park that's downtown, that's right across the street from our oldest high school that is part of this great district. So to me, it's not about any strike at all. This is politically motivated, and that has no business in a public school. Our focus is kids, period. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's disingenuous and it's disheartening. And on top of that, all of their social media posts, all of the advertisements that they're putting out on people's cars and in people's doors, they're lies. I mean, when I read some of that, I think, oh my gosh, what are they even talking about? And to me, it's incredibly frustrating because where are the kids in that? It has nothing to do with kids. It's all about them, and it's all about their organization, and it's all about their political turnpike.
Yeah. I think you're asking all the right questions here. I think as we try and shift the narrative from this idea that you have to be pro-union, pro-worker to be like pro-teacher, all of that sort of stuff. You're asking the right questions. I am particularly interested in what you mentioned about retribution, that there are some teachers who haven't been as vocal as they might like to be because they're afraid of what the union or what their peers might say. Did you fear retribution? It sounds like you were one of the brave ones where you openly stood for what you believed. But have you feared retribution at all from the union? Have you felt that they've been trying to be extra unfair to anyone for speaking out about this stuff?
Me personally, no, but I don't take any grief from people, so that's never been an issue for me. Mm-hmm. Other people are concerned that their friends are going to look at them differently. Their friends within their teacher group. I can tell you that I have lost friends from just running for the school board, let alone being on it. And that's because we have different agendas, if you will, political mindsets. But me being on the board doesn't have anything to do with politics. It's all about the kids. So going back to this retribution, there are people that think that they're going to be hollered at. They think they're going to be spit on. They think they're going to be pushed around if they cross the picket line. Now the teachers, they can't, if they're going to be striking at their school, they can't be on school property. If they are, they're going to be considered to be trespassing. And so other teachers may want to get to school earlier than they normally do, just in order to circumvent being ganged up on or maybe even physically attacked. And not necessarily in terms of punches or being pushed around, but the idea that your coworker may yell some sort of, I don't know, maybe cuss you out as you're trying to actually just go to work so you can pay your bills and feed your family, is not a good thing. And I don't know where that comes from within a person to be able to look at somebody else who is standing for their own ideals. They should be able to stand for their own ideals just as other people that are striking are standing for theirs. Now, I believe in striking. If that's what people feel they need to do, they have the right to do that. I will defend that even if I don't agree with them. They have absolutely the right to do that. This is America. But you don't have the right to be a jerk about it, and you certainly don't have a right to lie to people in order to get them over to your side, because I think that the majority of people, if they knew really the truth, they wouldn't strike. Mm-hmm. And they would be there for kids. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that there are people that are succumbing to those lies, and you know, I tell people this a lot. I say, you don't plant corn and get broccoli. At some point, what you're doing will come back, and it will bite you in the rear.
Yeah. Well, what would you say to maybe a teacher or a school board member at another school who is frustrated with what their union is doing and are struggling with next steps to take? What would you say to them to kind of embolden them to speak out and call out the things that they see their union doing wrong?
Well, in El Paso County, D11 is the only school district with a union. Mm-hmm. Well, not anymore, but we were the only district that had a union. If teachers want to be in a union, they'd have to go to Pueblo or Denver. And those school districts and those teachers on an individual basis are reaching out. And they're wondering exactly, how did you do that? What exactly does it take to do that? And for me, all it takes is consistency and a commitment to do what it is that you believe to be right. So if you are not wanting to have the union as part of your school district anymore, when that comes up for expiration, don't renew it. It's as simple as that. It's a vote of yes or no. And so when that vote comes up, do we renew this contract with a teachers union? And I want to be clear that a contract with a teachers union is not a teacher's contract. Every teacher has their own individual contract that is not touched by anything that goes on with the union. So if the master agreement is not renewed, every teacher still has their own contract with this school district. But if you're talking about other school districts and people wanting to do what we've done, all you have to do is say no, which is a complete sentence in and of itself, and stand firm in that. And know that you have support from others all around this state. And I think it's easier when you know that you have that support. Certainly, I'm the kind of person that's going to do the right thing no matter what, even if I'm standing alone, and I've done that. But a simple no, I'm not going to vote to renew this. And then you try to explain to the people that are coming to you asking you why, why you did that. And in my case, it wasn't about the kids at all. It was about a political organization that had no accountability to the public.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to sit down with us and talk about this stuff. Thank you so much for the work and the great advice you've given to all of the viewers and everyone watching and listening.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jill.